The story of the greatest trader of all time doesn't begin on Wall Street. There are no flashing tickers, no chaotic trading floors, just the quiet hum of equations and the soft scent of chalk dust. This is the story of Jim Simons, a man who saw the world not in dollars and cents, but in patterns and probabilities. He was a mathematician, a pure thinker. Numbers were his native language, and unraveling complex patterns was his lifelong obsession. As he once put it, "I always liked figuring things out. That's the fun part." Born in 1938, Jim Simons grew up in a humble middle-class family in Massachusetts. While other kids were chasing baseballs and collecting trading cards, Jim was collecting problems, mathematical ones. He possessed a rare and uncanny gift, the ability to stare into the face of chaos and perceive an underlying order. This wasn't just a skill. It was an instinct. His journey into the world of abstract thought led him to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. There, he didn't just study mathematics. He devoured it with the same ferocious intensity a seasoned trader studies market charts. His passion wasn't for the simple beauty of shapes in geometry, but for the profound hidden logic that governed them. He was fascinated by the rules beneath the surface, the invisible architecture of the universe. By his early 20s, the whispers in academic circles had grown into a roar. Jim Simons was a prodigy. He was a man who could navigate dimensions of thought that most of us can't even begin to imagine. After earning his PhD from Berkeley in record time, he landed a coveted position on the faculty at Harvard. He was living the academic dream, but for a mind like his, simply explaining complex ideas wasn't enough. He felt a deep, gnawing urge to apply his knowledge, to use math to solve real-world puzzles. This drive led him to a place shrouded in secrecy. At the height of the Cold War, Simons took a mysterious job with the U.S. National Security Agency. His official title was cryptanalyst. His unofficial mission? To break the unbreakable. He was a codebreaker. Day after day, he was immersed in a world of enemy ciphers, intricate patterns deliberately designed to conceal truth within a mountain of noise. It was the ultimate intellectual battleground. This experience proved to be the perfect, albeit unintentional, training ground for his future endeavors. It was here, buried deep inside the clandestine world of national security, that Simons honed his most crucial insight. Even behind the most seemingly random signals, there is always a hidden structure. A ghost in the machine. You just need two things to find it: enough data and the right algorithm. But Simons had another defining trait. He was fiercely independent and stubborn. He despised following orders and absolutely hated to lose. This rebellious streak eventually put him on a collision course with his superiors. After he publicly criticized America's involvement in the Vietnam War in an interview, he was unceremoniously fired. For many, losing a prestigious government job like that would have been a devastating setback, perhaps the end of a promising career. But for Jim Simons, it was just the beginning. He returned to the world he knew best: academia. He became the chair of the math department at Stony Brook University, a position that gave him the freedom to pursue his own intellectual curiosities. He continued to produce groundbreaking work, publishing brilliant papers on geometry and topology. Work so advanced that it would later contribute to the foundations of string theory, one of the most complex concepts in modern physics. He was at the pinnacle of the mathematical world. But even as he was celebrated for his contributions to pure math, a different kind of question began to stir in his mind. It was a quiet whisper at first, then a persistent, nagging thought. He looked at his work, at the elegant patterns he had uncovered in the abstract realm of geometry, and he started to wonder. If these hidden structures exist in the pure, logical world of mathematics, could they also exist somewhere messier, more chaotic, and infinitely more unpredictable? Could they exist in the financial markets? This single question would set him on a path that would not only change his life, but would forever revolutionize the world of finance. He was about to apply the rigorous logic of a mathematician to the wild emotional roller coaster of Wall Street. The idea was radical, almost absurd at the time. The market was driven by human psychology, by fear and greed, by news headlines and gut feelings. It was a domain of instinct, not algorithms. But Simons saw it differently. He hypothesized that the daily fluctuations of stock prices, the seemingly random dance of numbers on a screen, might not be random at all. He believed that beneath the noise,
at first, the idea sounded ridiculous even to him. Finance was a messy world of greed and emotion. Traders shouted, speculated, and gambled on gut instinct. It had nothing to do with the clean world of mathematics. But the thought wouldn't leave him, because if the market really was a system, if it produced numbers, signals, and noise, then perhaps it could be decoded, just like a secret message. And decoding messages was what Jim Simons did best. So in the late 1970s, he made a decision that shocked the academic world. He quit his tenured position, he left the comfort of academia behind, sold his house in the suburbs, and walked straight into the chaos of Wall Street. He wasn't a trader, he wasn't even interested in companies, profits, or earnings reports. He wanted data, raw, unfiltered data. Friends thought he was crazy. How could a mathematician compete with professionals who'd spent decades in finance? But Simons didn't want to compete on their terms, he wanted to rewrite the rules entirely. He started small, trading currencies from a quiet office in Long Island. The early years were brutal. He lost money, sometimes a lot. Markets didn't behave like equations. They were unpredictable, emotional, full of noise. But Simons refused to give up. He hated losing too much. Instead, he did what mathematicians do best. He collected data, looked for anomalies, and built models. Every failure became another clue, every loss another equation to solve. Slowly, patterns began to emerge, tiny irregularities that others ignored, price moves that seemed random but weren't, a mathematical fingerprint beneath the chaos. Jim Simons realized something extraordinary. The market wasn't random at all, it was just incredibly complex, too complex for human intuition, but not for a machine. He was still far from success, but the idea had taken root. If he could find a way to turn mathematics into a trading weapon, he might just change Wall Street forever. And in the shadows of Long Island, a quiet revolution was beginning. The age of the quants was about to be born. By the early 1980s, Jim Simons was no longer just a mathematician. He had become an experimenter, someone obsessed with the idea that markets could be solved. But to do that, he needed a new kind of lab, not filled with chemicals or telescopes, but with code, data, and genius minds. So he founded Renaissance Technologies, a name chosen deliberately, because he believed finance needed its own renaissance, a rebirth driven not by instinct, but by intellect. From day one, Simons broke every Wall Street rule. He refused to hire traders. Instead, he recruited mathematicians, physicists, astronomers, and linguists, people who had never bought a single stock in their lives, people who thought in equations, not emotions. One by one, he gathered them in a quiet office on Long Island. It looked nothing like a hedge fund, more like a graduate research lab. Whiteboards covered in formulas, computers crunching endless data streams, and in the middle of it all, Jim Simons, chain-smoking, pacing, thinking, calculating. He had one commandment: find the pattern. At first, the data looked like static random noise. Stock prices moved up and down without reason, but the Renaissance team refused to believe it was pure chaos. They started feeding him more and more information. Prices, trading volumes, interest rates, weather reports, even moon cycles, anything that might leave a mathematical trace, and slowly, patterns began to appear. It was as if they built a microscope powerful enough to see through the market as fog. Tiny relationships revealed themselves, correlations invisible to the human eye. When one currency ticked up by a fraction, another would follow minutes later. When volatility spiked in Tokyo, prices in New York shifted in response. The market, they realized, was not random. It was a vast, interconnected web of signals, and if you could map it, you could predict it. But the models weren't perfect. Early algorithms made mistakes, sometimes costly ones. The team would celebrate one week and panic the next. Still, Simons stayed calm. He told his team, We're not predicting people, we're predicting numbers. He knew emotion was the enemy. To refine the models, they started automating every trade, no more human decisions, every buy and sell was dictated by code. The system learned, adapted, and evolved. It didn't think like a trader, it thought like a mathematician. By the late 1980s, they had built something remarkable. A black box of algorithms that could see patterns faster than any human. They called it the Medallion Fund, named after the mathematical awards many of them had won. What made Medallion different wasn't just its intelligence, it was its discipline. It traded thousands of times a day, holding positions for minutes or even seconds. No emotion, no hesitation, just logic, and then it started working. Profits rose, losses shrank. Every year, the models got smarter, the code cleaner, the predictions sharper. They discovered inefficiencies so small, fractions of a cent, but multiplied by millions of trades, they became fortunes. Renaissance Technologies was printing money, yet no one outside knew how. Even on Wall Street, where rumors travel faster than prices, no one could explain Simon's success. Traders called him the Quant King. Some thought it was luck, others thought it was sorcery, but Simons just smiled. He wasn't chasing fame or headlines, he wanted to prove something bigger, that the human mind, when armed with mathematics, could conquer what everyone else called randomness. Inside Renaissance, the culture was unlike any other firm. They debated algorithms like philosophers, argued over data like poets. There were no trading floors, no shouting, no egos, only equations and results. And at the center of it all was Jim Simons, quietly orchestrating his symphony of logic. He didn't tell them what to build, he let them explore, fail, and discover, because discovery to him was the ultimate form of joy. By the early 1990s, the Medallion Fund was unstoppable. Its returns outpaced every major hedge fund in history, year after year. It beat the market no matter the conditions. Jim Simons had done what no one else had dared to try. He had built a machine that could out-hink Wall Street itself. But power always has a price, and as Medallion grew, it began to reshape not just fortunes but the entire financial world. Because once you prove that markets can be predicted by math, everyone else will try to do the same. And soon, Jim Simons would discover that success can create a monster of its own. By the mid-1990s, whispers about Jim Simons had spread through Wall Street. They said he had built a fund that never lost, a machine that printed money with surgical precision, a system so secret that even insiders didn't fully understand it. They called it the Medallion Fund, and it was unlike anything the financial world had ever seen. While most hedge funds were proud of beating the market by a few percentage points, Medallion was making returns of 30, 40, even 50% a year after fees. That wasn't trading, that was alchemy. What made it more astonishing was that the fund didn't trade like a human being. It didn't care about company earnings, CEOs, or breaking news. It saw only numbers, streams of data flowing through time. It looked for microscopic edges, tiny distortions, patterns invisible to the naked eye. And then it struck, buy, sell, exit, sometimes in seconds. No hesitation, no fear, just math. Every night, the team at Renaissance Technologies would gather new data. Price ticks, currency shifts, global indices, they fed it all into the machine. And every morning, the code evolved, learning, adjusting, refining. Simons once joked that their system was so complex, even he didn't know exactly what it was doing. He didn't need to. He trusted the math more than any human instinct. The results were staggering. From 1988 to 2005, the Medallion Fund delivered an average annual return of 39% after fees. Before fees, it was closer to 66%. No one in history, not Buffett, not Soros, not anyone, had ever come close. $100 invested at the start would have turned into millions. Yet Simons didn't let outsiders invest. He closed the fund to all external money, reserving it exclusively for his employees and partners. To this day, the Medallion Fund remains one of the most secretive and exclusive investment vehicles ever created. It was a fortress of knowledge, and inside that fortress, money multiplied faster than anywhere else on Earth. But what fascinated Simons wasn't the wealth, it was the process. He wasn't driven by greed, but by curiosity. He saw patterns where others saw chaos, and to him, profit was just proof that the pattern was real. Still, the numbers became impossible to ignore. Renaissance's computers were pulling profits out of the market so consistently that regulators and rivals began to wonder if something illegal was happening. But every audit, every inspection, every rumor, none found a single fault. It wasn't magic, it was mathematics. Simons had effectively built a financial time machine. He couldn't see the future, but he could see the probability of it faster and clearer than anyone else. And yet, for all his success, he remained humble. He didn't buy yachts or private jets. He preferred quiet dinners with scientists, mathematicians, and his family. When asked about his fortune, he shrugged and said, "We're just trying to understand how the world works." But as the profits piled up, something else began to shift. Other firms were watching. They wanted what Simons had built. Soon, Wall Street was flooded with copycats, quants, algorithms, and black boxes. Everyone chasing patterns, everyone trying to decode the noise. The very thing that had made Renaissance unique was now becoming the industry standard. Simons' revolution had unleashed a new era. The age of algorithms had begun. For the first time in history, human intuition was losing to machines. And as other funds raced to automate, markets grew faster, colder, and far more dangerous. Jim Simons had created the perfect trading machine, but perfection, he would soon realize, has its own dark side. By the 2000s, Jim Simons had conquered Wall Street. His Medallion Fund was no longer just successful, it was legendary. Year after year, it outperformed every competitor, every index, every genius trader. It didn't matter if markets crashed, economies collapsed, or politics turned chaotic. Medallion kept winning. But with every victory came an unsettling truth. The machine he built was changing not only his life, but the entire world of finance. Before Simons, Wall Street was ruled by instinct and emotion, by men in suits who shouted on trading floors and followed their gut. After Simons, that world began to vanish. In its place rose a new empire, one built not on intuition, but on algorithms. One by one, banks and hedge funds began hiring physicists and coders. They tore apart old trading models and replaced them with lines of code. The floor traders disappeared. The computers took over. By the mid-2000s, more than half of all trades in America were executed by machines. Fast forward a few years and that number would climb past 80%. The market had become an ecosystem of algorithms. Machines talking to machines, competing in microseconds, fighting over fractions of a cent. Jim Simons had started a revolution, but like all revolutions, it came with a cost. The system he helped create, a world where speed and precision ruled over human judgment, was becoming colder, more mechanical, and more fragile. Flash crashes began to appear, sudden, unexplained collapses that erased billions in seconds, only to rebound moments later. No human could even react in time, and no one truly understood why it happened. It was as if the market had developed a mind of its own, a digital creature born from algorithms and data, and once it started running, no one could stop it. Simons watched all this from the quiet halls of Renaissance. By then, he was older, wealthier than he had ever imagined. But behind his calm demeanor, there was reflection and perhaps a touch of unease. He had always believed in logic, in the beauty of patterns. But what happens when the entire world starts chasing the same patterns? When every hedge fund is armed with the same kind of code, the advantage disappears, the market adapts, the edge erodes. Even Medallion, despite its brilliance, began to feel the limits. The models had to evolve constantly because once others discovered a signal, it stopped working. The competition had become endless, a never-ending war of algorithms. Simons once told a colleague, the secret to our success is that we never think we've found the final answer. But he knew deep down, the more perfect your system becomes, the more fragile it is. By the late 2010s, financial markets no longer looked human. Trades happened in microseconds. Entire strategies lived and died in milliseconds. It wasn't about understanding value anymore, it was about beating time. Jim Simons had built a masterpiece of logic, but its perfection had pushed finance into a world beyond human comprehension. He often said he didn't regret it. He believed in the pursuit of knowledge above all else. Yet, when asked if markets had become too dependent on math, he smiled and said, almost softly, maybe. But math was always there. We just learned to listen. The man who once decoded enemy ciphers had decoded the market itself. But in doing so, he helped create a new kind of mystery, one that even he couldn't fully explain. Jim Simons had proven that the universe runs on patterns, but he also showed that when humans chase perfection, they may lose touch with what makes them human. And as the machines continued to hum, the master of algorithms began to turn his eyes elsewhere, to something even deeper, even purer than finance. When Jim Simons finally stepped away from Renaissance technologies, he left behind more than a fortune, he left behind a mystery. For over 3 decades, he had done the impossible. He beat Wall Street, not with intuition or charisma, but with logic, mathematics, and code. He proved that beneath the chaos of markets, there is order if you are smart enough to see it. But unlike many financial titans, Simons never seemed obsessed with power or fame. He never hosted flashy parties or appeared on magazine covers. He preferred chalkboards to champagne, equations to interviews, and when he finally retired, he didn't build a mansion on an island, he built a bridge back to science. After Renaissance, Jim Simons turned his focus to giving back to the world that had shaped him. He poured billions into mathematics, education, and fundamental research. He founded the Simons Foundation, one of the largest private supporters of science in the world. Its mission: to fund math, physics, and life sciences, to seek patterns not in stock prices, but in the very fabric of reality. He supported autism research, ocean mapping, astrophysics, quantum studies. He once said, "The universe is full of patterns, we just need better tools to see them." That, in essence, was his life philosophy. Inside Renaissance technologies, the Medallion Fund still runs, still secret, still legendary. Its algorithms refined by new generations of quants who continue his legacy. The exact code remains hidden, locked behind layers of encryption and confidentiality. Few know its secrets, even fewer understand them. But the impact of Jim Simons extends far beyond his fund. He changed the way the world thinks about money. He showed that data is the new intuition, and that mathematics, when applied with creativity and discipline, can unlock truths once thought unreachable. Today, every major financial institution on Earth relies on quantitative analysis, predictive modeling, and AI. The era of gut feelings is gone, replaced by algorithms inspired, directly or indirectly, by Simons' vision. He didn't just play the game of Wall Street, he rewrote it, and yet, for all his genius, Jim Simons remained human, curious, restless, always searching. He once said, reflecting on his life, "Luck plays a role in anything, but mathematics, I think, gives you a better chance." He never claimed to have all the answers. He only believed that the world, no matter how chaotic, could be understood if you were willing to look deeply enough. In that sense, Jim Simons wasn't just a trader or a scientist. He was a philosopher of probability, a man who looked at randomness and saw beauty. Today, when people talk about Wall Street legends, names like Buffett, Soros, Jim Simons stands apart, quiet, elusive, almost mythical, because his greatest creation wasn't his fortune. It was the idea that truth hides in data and that the human mind, powered by curiosity and math, can uncover it. He built a machine that conquered markets. He left a legacy that continues to shape science, and he reminded the world that knowledge, not wealth, is the most powerful form of success. in the end, Jim Simon's story is not just about Wall Street. It's about something deeper, the eternal human desire to find meaning in the chaos, and perhaps that's why, even after all his victories, he remained a mathematician at heart. Because for Jim Simons, the greatest profit was never money, it was understanding.
Much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating minds, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next video.